Good afternoon, everybody. Delighted that we could have all of you join into one session, which is actually more than IN and more than anything else, focused on building the nation beyond just COVID and really taking this to the country to a different stage. And I'm really, really happy for the kind of lineup of speakers we have today. And I'm going to really introduce only the first speaker because he's going to be our real Sutradhar for this session. So, welcome to Mr. Saurabh Srivastava, a leading entrepreneur, investor, institution builder. He's built organizations like NASSCOM, Indian Venture Capital Association, TIE, and of course, IAN. He's really been the force behind the entrepreneurial ecosystem and the IT industry. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has presented him an award, and he's been a recipient of the Padma Shri Award for Entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Padmaja. And first of all, a great, very warm welcome to everyone who's joined the panel today. I really hope all of you will find it interesting and useful, and you'll get ideas and you'll continue to give us some ideas. And I really particularly want to welcome and thank the panel members who've joined today to speak. Dr. Vinod Paul, who will join us in a little bit, is a member of Niti Aayog, and he chairs the Empowered Group on the Medical Emergency Management Plan for COVID-19. And he's also chairman of the Board of Governors of the Medical Council of India. Dr. Vijay Raghavan, thank you very much for joining us. He's a principal scientific advisor to the Government of India. He served as the director of the National Center for Biology Sciences, and more recently as Secretary DBT. But I'm particularly delighted he, just like me, is an alumnus of IIT Kanpur. Dr. Renu Swarup is Secretary, Department of Biotechnology, Chairman of BIRAC. And under her leadership, BIRAC has transformed the landscape in India in the biotech area. Today, we have thousands of entrepreneurs with innovative tech trying to build world-class companies, where just 5 years ago, there were none. And now to our colleagues from industry, Sunil Munjal is not just the co-founder of the Hero Group and chairman of Hero Enterprises, but many institutions. BML Munjal University, Serendipity Arts Trust. He is a thought leader, social entrepreneur, investor, and very focused on affordable healthcare. He was also past president of CII. Chris Gopalakrishnan is a co-founder and former CEO of Infosys, Chairman Board of Governors of IIIT Bangalore, and on the Board of Governors of IITs in Madras and Bangalore, and I am in Bangalore. He has funded serious research on the brain, and hopefully he'll talk about that. He is a Padma Bhushan awardee and past president of CII. And Ajay Chaudhary is a co-founder of HCL, former chair of HCL Infosystems. He's been chairman of IIT Patna and IIT Hyderabad, and is currently chairman of IIT IIIT Naya Rampur. And he's chairman of the Electronic Skills Council of India and also Padma Bhushan awardee. The thing we wanted to discuss today, and I'm so happy that people have been able to make time to come, is that yes, we're in the midst of a great challenge, perhaps the biggest in living memory, because I imagine most of us, like me, were born after World War II ended. Yes, it is a big challenge, but we know that this will pass. This too will pass. So today, I didn't want to dwell too much on the challenges, but to see how could we take the learnings from here? How could we use them? And what do we need to do? So when this is over, we emerge much stronger as a country. We emerge much better positioned globally, and we do things where we can become a major contributor to not just in a better position ourselves, to the world when this kind of crisis hits again, because I'm sure it will. So there are many learnings. And we have challenges. We are, after all, still a country that is not fully developed. We're the second largest population. So we clearly have challenges, and we're becoming acutely aware of some of them. A world-class health infrastructure, which is not there, is just one of them. But it is also our acute dependence, for instance, on China, on many, many parts of our supply chain, which make it very difficult for us in a situation like this, where some of that supply chain is challenged. We have been slowly getting on board a connect between industry and academia and government. Situations like this make a heavy demand on it, and we are recognizing that while everybody is working hard, we could probably put in place better systems. We are finding the advantages of having a world-class pharma infrastructure. It's standing us in very good stead. And I said before, BIRAC's excellent work in the last 5 years has created a situation where today we have hundreds, if not thousands of startups rising up to the challenge. Talking of innovation, products, technologies that we need to meet today's challenge from the coronavirus. And I must say the government has reacted phenomenally on this. And I'll just give you one small story. At IN, we get anyway thousands of entrepreneurs coming to us, these days even more, but very focused on the health sector. And one day there was a woman from Bangalore who was building a solution for much better testing and much more rapid testing of tuberculosis, and built a platform. And she said to me that I can use this for testing for COVID. It'll be a better test, a quicker test, cheaper test, whatever. So I sent a mail to Amitabh Kant, I sent a mail to Dr. Renu Suru. I got a response from both of them in less than 30 minutes. Amitabh Kant passed on my mail to Dr. Vijay Raghavan, and within minutes, he had gotten back to me. They all wanted who the entrepreneur was, they wanted details. And this was happening between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. That gives you an idea of how it's not just us who are 24/7, but everybody else. So I want to leave some thoughts, and then we'll go to our speakers. Is one of the things is we need to work on institutionalizing the right architecture for really deep tech innovation in India. I mean, the US after the World War thought of this and said, how will we create R&D for the rest of the world and take leadership? And they did a tango of government, academia, and industry. The National Science Foundation, DARPA, NIH, and all that came into being. And what they started to do is match national priorities with capabilities, funding projects without too much red tape, facilitating collaboration, easing barriers to IP, and all the rest of it. In our case, I think particularly in the healthcare sector, we have a huge opportunity. The tremendous work done by DBT, by the Ministry of Health, by BIRAC, is a situation today where it's booming with startups with innovative ideas. The big focus that we did 5 years ago, right down from the Prime Minister and led by him on Startup India, has created a situation where we're the third largest and most active startup hub in the world. We now need to take it to the next level, but it cannot be just government. So I want to state that government needs to think on what it can do, how can we better position, and private capital from VCs, corporates, family offices, and investors must also get into the sector. It must be encouraged to do so. Today, tech is at the heart of all solutions, and AI's best and most impactful use is perhaps in healthcare. And we're very fortunate that we have a world-class IT industry, possibly the second largest base of tech professionals outside of the US. And so if we can get a bunch of things right, we could end up producing solutions that the world needs and at a price that the world can afford. And the next time that there is such a crisis, we are much better positioned to respond to it, to make what's needed, be not dependent so much on supply chains that we cannot control. So with that, I just want to move to getting our panelists to speak. May I request you, Dr. Vijay Raghavan?
Yeah, thank you very much, Saurabh. I think, first of all, it's a great honor to be in this distinguished group. And I must say that you've covered all the points of interest and concern so well. Let me just focus on 2 points very briefly. Going ahead from the post-COVID period. And first of all, the immediate urgency of various matters will either become a normal, something we get habituated to, or there will be a new normal, which will be a very different world. In either case, there are many important things for us to not only cope, but to do well. You pointed out 2 very important aspects. One, the nature and the speed with which our academia, our industry, our bureaucracy all came together. That is indeed wonderful. And the question is, if this kind of synergy can come by in an emergency, what can we do to make sure that this is normally there? So that is my first point, which I think we need to address. And I'll allude to that. The second is that remember that we've come together not only because of the emergency, but because, as you said, global supply chains were blocked. In such a situation, being innovative and manufacturing and making new kits and test items and devices and so on and so forth is something which serves the emergency. When the emergency is over or when supply chains open up, every country which has had these kinds of problems will try to do what it can to mitigate against this kind of a thing happening again. And the principal global supply chain leader today for many components, i.e. China, will try to get back its position. So in other words, the extraordinary learning experiences we have had now as a consequence of this emergency will have to contend with supply chains coming back again for us to act on. So what is needed, and I'll end here with just 2 very important suggestions for us, is a mechanism where we shift, for the first aspect, how can our academia, industry, bureaucracy collaborate? We need to very rapidly put in place structural changes in our institutions and in our bureaucracy so that this is the norm. Our institutions should be looked at the level of the institution and not at the level of individuals within the institution. Leadership should be free to do what it wants inside the institution, and the institution as a whole should be accountable to the board and not to anyone else, even if it is a government-supported institution. This must be put in place firmly. There will be good boards, there will be bad boards, but there will be good institutions if there are good boards. Government as a manager of a board will always sync the board to the lowest common denominator level of institutional management. Some institutions will be exceptional despite that, but they would have become exceptional because they fought against all odds. So government needs to now rethink the way exceptionalism and quality can come under institutions. Once you do that, you can put extraordinary demands on institutions that no matter whether they are basic or applied institutions, they have the flexibility to deal with important social and economic issues and raise resources in addition to getting them from government projects. So this needs to be something which we need to push rather firmly and rather soon. And your suggestions on how to do this meaningfully in our system is important. The second is about the way our government agencies work and our relationship with the supply chain issues. Our government agencies have put an extraordinary amount of work. They've been working 24/7. And even at quote unquote peacetime, it is amazing how much effort people in government puts in. It's not that they don't have their heart in the right place or they don't put in effort. It is the siloed structure and the rigor of various kinds of processes which cause all sorts of challenges to government. A former chief secretary asked me many years ago, cabinet secretary, how answer to a question given to civil service entrance exams. And the question was, if there is an earthquake, what would you do? A, throw all processes to the winds and attempt to save the maximum number of lives. B, follow processes as much as you can, but save as many lives as you can. C, follow processes fully. All seasoned government officials said C. All the entrant officials said A. So it shows how we have become so process driven at all costs. We need to change this formally. So just as institutional outcomes need to change, government agencies should have full flexibility to move their funds, move their processes internally, and then be accountable for outcomes. If we do these two things, then the third aspect, facilitating our industry to be globally competitive, is an achievable agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vijay Raghavan. We'll probably come back to you for some more comments as we go around. And Dr. Swaroop, may we ask for your thoughts?
Thank you very much. And thank you so much for having me on this panel. And I think it's got the eminent panelists which are going to discuss some very important matters, which Srivastav, you did outline so well in the beginning. And Dr. Vijay Raghavan has added key points about what the government is to do and what the processes, how important they are. I think the key point that you brought out right in the beginning is the new normal that all of us are talking about. How is life going to change? And that's really your panel for today, beyond post-COVID as we look at it. So I think if you look at this COVID way and what has it taught us, it's important to just step back for a moment and say that while we've responded so well to this challenge in terms of putting our act together, getting the coordination that we've talked about between industry and academia and government, getting the startups to respond, I think we need to step back and say, how did we quickly respond to this? It's important to note that there was a very strong foundation which was set up a couple of years back. And that foundation gave us the strength then to use that as a platform on which we could really take forward with great speed what we are really wanting to do. And it's remarkable how in this very short time, we have been able to at least come forward collectively, start making a difference in many, many domain areas, and be prepared to then deliver in other areas which there is a demand on us. You spoke about the Startup India and the Make in India. And I think that really was key and critical. The BIRAC model was talked about, and the BIRAC model has delivered in the last 5 to 7 years. It's important to understand what was so unique about that model. Model was that staying within the government system, having a government public sector, we could actually get the industry, the academia, and the startups to engage with each other. There was total blurring of boundaries between these three very important stakeholders. And because those boundaries got blurred, there was a high level of trust and confidence that came between these stakeholders. And I think for any such partnership to move ahead, you do need to have this very, very important trust factor, which allows you to then move ahead. Now, coming to specifically this COVID, the moment we got into this challenge, and this is definitely an unprecedented challenge, we will learn to cope up with it. We will learn how to move ahead. But How is it that we're going to take forward? What is the learning? And can we use this crisis as an opportunity is what all of us are really talking about. So we did have this wonderful partnership that exists. It was important for us to now just give them that stimulus or give them act as a catalyst to see how we could bring them together and how would they respond. What did the government do? So let's look at the various stakeholders. What did they do and how did we come and respond to this? What was the learning in that? Yes, we did understand, appreciate that there were challenges because the supply chains had been disrupted. We needed very quick solutions which were important for the country, but which would also impact globally. We needed collaborations because in this particular time of crisis, there could be no one group which would be able to deliver. It has to be a collaboration, interinstitutional collaboration, interagency collaboration, and also looking at global collaborations. So basically what we were looking at is where are we, how do each of these players respond? From the government side, it was important for us to set in place a very, very important rapid response framework. This rapid response framework was to address all the various challenges that we have, to see how we respond to getting these innovations moving ahead. Look at the regulations, because if you look at the biotechnology sector, any of the products which have to be developed, there is a very key factor, and that's the regulation, which normally is considered as a very big hurdle when these product development chains move forward. So we had to look at the regulatory response framework. We had to look at seeing how we could get these startups to be connected to larger networks. And the larger networks were not just of the investors, but these larger networks were also with the academy and the industry. So I think what we really wanted to do was to see how we could connect this rapid regulatory framework and address. Now, if you see what have we done in these last couple of months, 2 months to be precise, we have been able to now give a commitment that all the kits that we develop would be indigenous Make in India kits. And I think that is a huge, huge delivery that has been done. All our own startups who are looking at it. We've got the industry, we've got the academia to come forward for the vaccine development. We've looked at how we could, more than 200 solutions of startups. Mr. Srivastava spoke about one. There have been more than 200 such startups who have been brought together. And today those startups are being funded through different networks. It was so good to see co-funding opportunities coming in. But I think we need to do more of these. I think what we really need to do is, if we've got these SOPs in place, which we've responded in this crisis, can these SOPs, as has been said, become institutionalized? Why do we have to have these SOPs only for a crisis? Is this a learning where we can institutionalize these? We don't need such urgent responses only for emergencies. We need these urgent responses for other than emergencies as well. And through this short period, we know that we can do it. I think it's important to see how we use this opportunity that we have now to make India, not just make in India, but make it for the global markets, and also use these processes of connecting the government, the academia, the industry, and the startups, and take this platform forward by bringing everyone together. So I'll stop here and maybe come back later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have we been able to get Dr. Paul in yet? Padmaja?
Rajneesh is working on that. He'll soon be on.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, he's having a bit of a challenge. He's just coming online. I'm with him on the phone.
Okay, okay. So in the meantime, let me actually move with the industry side of comments. So let me start with you, Sunil. Your initial comments. Yeah.
Sure. First, I think what's been said by Dr. Saroop, Dr. Vijay Raghavan, and Saurabh is reasonably comprehensive in where we are, where we need to go. Let me talk about a middle situation. We talk of a new normal. Let me talk of a new abnormal. The situation between now and until it actually gets normal. Because it is also clear right now, this is not going away in a hurry. We're not going to find a vaccine which will be available around the world and be applied in the next 12 to 18 months. Even if we find one in the next 6 to 10 months, it will still take that long for it to be made available and be effective, probably longer. So, and the impact of this on the economy is currently likely to be 2 years. If the lockdown continues as is, and if it continues longer, that could be more than 2 years. So there is an interim period between what becomes a situation where we can say we are kind of leading a normal life with some of our old habits permanently gone away, and some will spring back. It is human nature, by the way. We may not go to a movie theater now. We may not even go for the next year or even 2, but 3 or 4 years later, we will find ourselves sitting in a stadium somewhere or watching a movie theater, etc. So some of these, we need to figure out a way to what is it that's important at this moment for us to do right now. Which is why what India did initially with this massive lockdown was very, very impressive. Of course, something slipped through the cracks. We did not respond quickly enough to the human tragedy that almost got created by the displaced workers. But overall, if you see, compared to literally any other country in the world, we have managed more successfully to push away the growth of high numbers and allowed ourselves the time as a prep time for hospital beds, ICUs, protective gear, ventilators, and the entire system that was required. We are certainly better prepared. We should also understand that we've only pushed it away. We've not eradicated the disease. And these numbers will come. The question is only when, it's not if. These will climb, and also we will get to know more as we test more. At this moment, our testing is one of the lowest as a percentage of the population, not one of, it is the lowest as a percentage of the population. Although it's debatable how beneficial it is to know or not know, because it's also been seen that a large section of the population remains asymptomatic. It does not show up, which is frankly good news. If many of us have been infected, and as many of us will get infected, it is important for us to start looking at this as a disease and not as a crime. Right now, communities, even government departments, etc., are pointing a finger at person that as if there's something wrong with that individual or the family. They're painting signs outside people's homes. I think we have to be very, very careful with this, that the social messaging needs to get okay. That's important. The second thing is that we are sitting on a powder keg of unemployment. While the government requested business to not fire people and pay the wages and salaries, most companies did pay for the month of March. But come April, many companies started questioning, especially small businesses, saying that, look, I have no revenue or very low revenue, and I have these costs which are continuing. My rental costs, bijli costs, etc. All of these are on. And I also have a wage and salary bill that I have to clear. And the banks are actually not supporting. Banks, despite being flush with funds, chose to lend money only to the top-rated companies because they are very risk-averse right now. Because don't forget, when we had the 2008 crisis, banks went in with a 2.5% non-performing loan book. At this moment, they walked in with a 10% already. The economy was in trouble as we walked into this. So we do need to do things a little bit in an accelerated fashion right now, which is the reason some of us have been pushing again and again and again that the 0.7% of the GDP fiscal support that's been done by the government is very welcome, but it's definitely not enough. The monetary side is good, but is not having the impact because the money from the system is not going down to the real economy yet. We've also seen that while in the services businesses, in the IT services and the BPO services, many of the companies have been able to use work from home quite successfully. But in the manufacturing, it is a challenge because if your factory is shut down, it is shut down. So the challenges actually are pretty complex and restarting at this moment. So if we start to support companies which are suffering, we will not bring the economic engine to a complete grinding halt. Because restarting this is a much bigger challenge than shutting it down. Because for manufacturing, especially for complex manufacturing like automotive, textiles, infrastructure projects, etc., you need the entire value chain to be in currency before you can actually operate. The dealer should be able to sell, the workshop should be able to operate, the financial should be able to finance, and every part of the supply chain partner should be available to supply parts and subcomponents for, let's say, an automotive OEM to be able to be functional. So it is important, therefore, that we quickly learn that we have to live with this for a while, and therefore the need for us with great caution and great precaution to restart economic activities is very, very critical. But as Saurabh said at the beginning, this will get behind us in a year or two or whatever time it takes. So while we prepare for this period, we need to use this time very intelligently. It would be a shame to waste a crisis and not build capabilities in India, both individual capabilities, institutional capabilities, and capabilities of the government system, as Dr. Vijay Raghavan was saying at the beginning. It is time for big reform to take place right now. Reform all the way, right from the top, on process, on incentivization, on the areas of reform. There are many areas which we have not touched for a long, long time. It is important and critical that we not just touch them, we make the change, because people will accept the change right now. They do realize India's need to become competitive, because as you lose more jobs, it's going to impact consumption. On the one hand, we need to make business more competitive, not only to take new business from what was going to China, but to be a big player in the world economy, on the world stage. And we have a real opportunity right now. So as they say in China, the symbol for crisis has two parts. One is danger, and the second is opportunity. And we're seeing both of them together. It is up to us how we strike the balance.
Good. Thanks, Sunil. Thanks very much. I see that Dr. Paul has been able to connect. Welcome, Dr. Paul. Thank you very much for joining us. I already introduced you to...
I had some technical difficulties, so please pardon.
No, not at all.
Thank you.
I should tell you that we have right now with us, Padmaja, how many 100 people? I think Padmaja is on mute, I think, yeah. So we are
about 200 people, and we are live on Facebook as well.
Okay. So therefore, they all won't be visible here because we can't possibly put it here. So Dr. Paul, I think just a line to say that what we were discussing is that yes, this is the biggest challenge that we've seen in living memory, and we are learning in terms of where we have challenges and what we haven't got right. But we also want to focus a little bit on this will pass. What and how can we use the learnings that we're finding right now and basically convert them into opportunities for us to do things both at level of government, industry, institutionally, so that we emerge out of this in better shape than when we went in, more competitive than we are today. Chris, can I request you please come in?
Thank you, Saurabh. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Clearly.
Okay. So first point I want to talk about is the point that many speakers have already talked about, which is about building our capacity in a innovation-led economy, a science-led economy. We have, as others have said, scrambled and put together a coalition of academia, industry, government to address many of the challenges. And my hats off to everyone on how we have responded to this crisis. We have, as Sunil said, we have actually responded better because the number of deaths, at least currently, are lower than per capita, lower than any other country in the world, I believe. But looking ahead, if you want to build a science and innovation-led economy, we need to figure out what are the models that are important, and we need to look at the resources themselves. First, let me talk about the resources. We invest about 0.6 0.7% of GDP on research, of which 0.6 comes from the government and 0.1% comes from industry. I believe that we need to move this significantly forward, 1.5% from government and 1.5% from industry. 1.5% from industry means industry will have to spend 15 times more than what it's spending now. We need to look at how to incentivize it. We need to look at how to access other sources of funding, which is private, which is philanthropy. Today, most of the philanthropic initiatives are geared towards addressing the issues of education or midday meal scheme and things like that, which is also important. But I think we need to figure out how we can increase the spending on research. Second, we need to look at the models themselves. And BIRAC is one model which I believe is working very well in bringing academia, industry, etc. together. But we need to look at the different models that exist. And I think Vijay Raghavan talked about board-led academic institutions. Only recently, I believe that the academic institutions have woken up to NIRF rankings, the institutional ranking framework that we have created. So when you think about a not-for-profit organization which is board-led, we have to think about the right measurements for evaluating that. And so we need to, I believe, create a ranking framework for our research institutions and rank our research institutions based on that framework. I think just doing that will actually change the perception. Now, within this ranking, we must include not just the papers published or the number of people who are working there, but we must include the number of products, the number of businesses, the number of ideas that create wealth for our economy, for our nation, for our society. I think that has to be part of that. And once you do that, then we come to the model that will actually enable us to do that. There are many different models. Volunteer-led model, that's iSpirit, which changed the fintech ecosystem. We can look at the ISRO model, where ISRO is a leading space research organization, but works with private sector. BIRAC is another model. We can look at the IIT Madras Research Park model, which has created an ecosystem for doing research along with industrial research, along with academic institution, etc. So that's the first point I want to make, how to change the research ecosystem. The second point I want to make is data is going to become very important. We need to define as a policy what data we will make public and make available. If you take, for example, healthcare data, we need to create a framework for anonymized healthcare data to be available for research purposes. This is very important for even a drug development industry to develop. Many of the trials are now first going to be done on computers before it's going to be done physically in a hospital, etc. So we need to ensure that, for example, the cancer database or the genomic database, these are available for people to access and available for research purposes, available for an innovation-led healthcare industry to develop in the country. The last point I want to talk about in the first round is about reformation, regulatory changes and things like that. I believe that every time we tried this regulatory change and reforming, in a crisis it works. When the Prime Minister pushes, it works. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It just falls through the cracks. It doesn't change. So I started thinking about this and looked at the IT industry's experience. The IT industry did extremely well because we created Software Technology Park framework. The STP framework was that under MeitY, this is a body that's available to give all kinds of approvals, building approvals, excise approvals, customs approvals, everything. If you want to report your revenue for tax exemption, the data was given to STP. So here is one single window system that the government created, which functioned all the way from 1989. Even today it exists, but of course, all its powers have been converted into some other mechanism. STP doesn't anymore function that, how it functions, because the STP scheme itself has sunset. But we can actually look at that model and create special purpose vehicles with complete accountability and complete authority to do the things as STPs were able to do. And that way, I believe reforms will happen, regulations will change, etc. When we followed this up with SEZ, we didn't do a good job, I believe, because now we have to go to the finance department, finance ministry, we have to go to the commerce and industries ministry, you have to go to the state government. We completely missed the boat on that. So we need to look at the STP model in critical areas, in very important areas where we want to reform the system, completely go outside the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. Dr. Paul, would you like to come in now?
Okay, maybe let me say that I may get an opportunity again if I hear more people. Let me say 4 points that come to my mind. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And again, apologies for the delay. I would make 4 points. Firstly, it's very valuable to try to visualize a world in which we are living happily with COVID, and then going beyond that and looking at what opportunities may arise and how we need to be prepared to capture those opportunities. And that is a very valuable discussion. And I think the ideas, are fascinating. Opportunities are fascinating. Positioning is very important, and we have to be ahead of that particular curve. Even as currently we are ahead of the COVID-19 curve. So that's very exciting. But let me begin by saying that please appreciate the fact that the pandemic is not over. From the two speakers, what I heard, or the narrative as if the pandemic is over and we can start to live in the post-COVID-19 era and then see what best we can do. I want you to be very, very alert as a community of a wide range of stakeholders and leaders that this pandemic is in an early stage for all of us. The big decision that the nation took of the lockdown is painful, truly. But as there is a true consensus that this was needed, this was timely, and it has helped in suppressing the transmission chain of the virus, as well as giving us an opportunity to prepare the nation as a nation, as community, as society, and as individuals and families. And thirdly, it has given us an opportunity to be able to mount a health systems response, which is about facilities and testing and also equally importantly, surveillance and how you provide stewardship to the health system. But we are very much in the early stage. I'm sure I heard a point being made that yes, we have a couple of months before maybe final solution in the form of vaccine may come or drugs may come. Yeah, but that's a lot of time. And when a virus which is ruthlessly spreading still and would spread without any shield on our part, we have to be very concerned about how we as a large stakeholder community provide leadership community, I would say, that reflected on this roundtable, is going to provide a wider range of comprehensive ideas to cope up with this. I want you to have, thinking applied to how we cope up when the disease would spread. Disease would happen unpredictably in one city and the other city. We don't know. I hope it doesn't happen. We pray it will not happen. But we must learn how, crushed the systems appeared in mega cities, Mumbai and Delhi and Indore, and more would come. So I want us to think about how we respond to this phase, even as we envision the future and respond to the opportunities that are lying there, which of course India cannot afford to miss. But in the current scenario, I like us to think about how we all can promote what the guidelines of the government would say. But when I'm speaking to industry leaders, how you can help us in very important strategic areas. And I'm not talking only about the PPEs and ventilators today. I'm saying we have to mount very important trials for vaccines and drugs. How can you help us? Our response, so that's one area, and maybe some discussion has already taken place. But we need help. We need facilitation. We need perhaps resources. We need moral support, a consensus, and it should be spoken. We haven't heard industry leadership giving a call to the industry itself and to the researchers and people like us to work harder to find these solutions, which are not only for India, but also for the world. I want you to please join hands in solidarity to find 3 types of or 4 types of scientific solutions. The vaccine is on the top because that is the shield that we are hoping for. Drugs, and we are only getting the WhatsApp messages and discussions in the media on things that are happening somewhere else. Help us to do things here in much more effective manner. Then, of course, diagnostics, on which India has actually already shown tremendous progress. And some of the people, Dr. Renu and Dr. Vijay Raghavanji, they have made sure that our progress in that area is very, very rapid, and we already have products to be proud of. But I'm going further and requesting you to see how much more should be done in this space, how you can help us build an enterprise of science and technology solutions today, tomorrow, this month, because that is where the challenges are. I like us to, therefore, I like you to think about this. The second plane on which similar kind of a response is needed is the private health sector. We started at a time when the private health sector, from the core of their heart, supported the government's efforts and came forward in more than one way. And they have participated very well. But on the expectation side of the government, I hear that we have not worked together as much as we should. We are refusing patients. We are asking for this and the other. I don't want to go into the details, but that connect, which was intended, and it is there in the heart as Indian, has not happened. Can we bridge this? Because the future months and weeks would need this. Today we got away because we have suppressed the chain of transmission. We are working with our existing capacities to deal with the surges that used to do today. We still have some headroom, but it may go away for all you know. And how can we have private sector not fully participating when it has 60% of the specialty beds and 80% of the critical care beds? I want you to provide, guidance and buffer and support to the health sector in the private space. And within that, an important thing which is very critical when we are looking at the challenges is that their business models are falling apart. And mostly because of no fault of theirs, the footfalls have fallen. We are converting some of them and many of them into COVID-19. Then we are imposing some restriction one way or the other. There is a real threat of losing 60% of the distorting 60% of India's health system. And we need it. I want us to think about how a bridge can be created, how buffers can be created, how support systems can be created, that we have this huge capacity available to the people of India. So on 2 spaces, I'm begging your indulgence. One, on technology solutions. What is it that can put as boosters to make sure that this Gaganyaan moment and Apollo 11 moment is captured by the Indian scientists and the Indian industry? We must be in dialogue for that, because your energies, your ideas, your enterprise, you can tell us how best to do it in the fastest manner. And the second one is I'm appealing specifically for private sector, bridging with the private sector better, so that their concerns, their stresses are taken care of, even as we create glue to work together. That's my first point. My second point has already been being discussed, that our opportunities lie in the space of medical devices, they lie in pharma, they lie in vaccine for future, and other sectors that you talked about. I fully support, and if I coming again, then maybe if I have something specific to add, I like to add. But I bring the other side of that phase, and there I think there is post-COVID or intra-COVID-19 era is a whole lot disruptive for the social order itself. We are just seeing the beginning of this, and we have seen this panning out in every country. We have our unique problems and constraints and strengths, but the social order, the social fabric, the social balance itself is under very, very major stress. And that's happening today, happened yesterday, happened next week. I want us to think that how we maintain a very correct balance of sanity as a society in these very tough times. Mental health apart, that perhaps comes in my first point in a way, so to say, where you can come in and help in a particular way. But here I'm talking about the entire, this very social fabric. When the incomes disappear by 70%, how are we going to cope up? And that debate is just starting. I want us to think how these pressures would change the day-to-day life for all of us. I think current debates are relatively simplistic, knee-jerk, and I think very, in a way, positive and passionate and pro-poor. But there has to be a deeper debate as to how, as a society, we create an example, a role model for the world, that a responsible country like ours, with a great culture, great history, and great enterprise, as well as great nationhood spirit, can make sure that our less endowed people, poor people, and even the middle classes are not pushed to the margins when we are looking at this phase. That, of course, that very much pans out into the post-COVID-19. But I think the work and the imperatives of that are very much important today. And last point that I want to make is that we have learned one important lesson, for sure. Actually, the world has learned that lesson, that we have to prepare for war when there is peace. And when we look at that, although even the best systems in the world have collapsed in this tsunami, but we have a long way in terms of an adequate health system, adequate investment in health system, every which way, whether it is human resources or number of beds or coverage of services or out-of-pocket expenses. So I think as a society and as leaders of the society, we must think what we should do to our health system. What kind of investments do we make for a health system which is more resilient, more responsible, more robust, and meets the expectations of people of today's time. That goes back to universal health coverage. That goes back to a strong, resilient primary health care. It goes back to commodities and affordability. It goes to primary care and prevention, so that this capital of the world for non-communicable diseases and fat people as well as undernourished people addresses these problems at the heart. And that would mean, and that is my last comment, when we have good times, then we say, yes, we will increase spending from 2 to 3%. One particular government in the past said that. Those were lovely times, but we did not. because many other things had to be done. When the tough times come, then we don't do it because now we have to also look after those very sectors. So one fine day, the nation has to make a decision. Yes, that we have to spend 3% or 4% of GDP on health, which means somewhere else you will cut the spending. Because it is proportion of GDP that you all teach us for good health. So in good times, you look at incremental gain and the budget looks good. In constrained time, you say there are other priorities. As a nation, that's how we have, we have taken the path of incremental increase in investment. Very precious investments in health system and healthcare delivery have been made, no doubt about it, at a great cost. Something else had to be cut even for what we were getting. And same applies to science and technology. So I would say as a nation, can we please learn this lesson once and for all? Who had thought that, a virus, the total weight of that virus is probably less than 1 gram for the entire planet, has brought the mightiest in the world down to their knees. We must invest in a strong health system in future, and we must create a narrative now and as we move into much better times, hopefully in near future. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Dr. Paul. I think what I'll do is, firstly, I think the points you raise are very much the reason we thought setting up this roundtable was helpful, because it's trying to understand the challenges, the learnings, and how do we, industry, government, everybody, get into this together, understand each other elements, so we come out of this having learned more in better position. So let me ask Ajay to share his thoughts, and then we can get into a discussion with some questions as well.
Thank you, Saurabh. Dr. Paul has really set the agenda quite clearly for us, and I think we will need to discuss that quite thoroughly. And very clearly, we are not yet out of the woods. We are very much in COVID at this moment. We've learned from the last 2 months of what has made COVID, what COVID has made us do. And I think we need to adapt to those new normals very, very quickly in terms of innovation. And I think what COVID is doing to us is that it's fundamentally bringing 3-4 areas in front of us. And one of the most important areas is clean. I think clean is going to be a mantra for us in terms of health, sustainability, environmental solutions, etc. The second thing that COVID is doing is how we are together here today, connectivity. So it's connectivity, virtual connectivity will be the norm. And digital transformation will phenomenally accelerate for us to work together. And I think that is going to be the change we are bringing, and we need to make sure that the pace of that change is kept up, because we just can't go away and say, COVID was there, we did this, and now we can move on with our lives. It is not going to go away so soon. I think the third thing is community. We need to have this relationship at different levels, and this community feeling of everybody working together is a very important part that we have learned. And I think the whole idea of government, academics, research, startups, everybody working together at a pace that we have never seen before. I think this is something that we need to continue to do and encourage, so that we can make sure that the things that we have learned are not lost soon enough. And of course, creativity is really very much part of us. We need to innovate. We need to make sure that we do flexible things, we do frugal things, and we also create profitable business solutions based on what I call online everything, because that's really going to be the way we will have to work tomorrow. I think 2040 is really when sort of Asia is expected to be 40% of the global consumption. And is COVID trying to tell us that it's a tipping point for the Asian century, or maybe the Indian century? We really can't wait for the next pandemic. And we need to continuously improve our health infrastructure, as Dr. Paul said. And government has already put in 15,000 crores, and I think we will need to keep on putting much, much more if we really want to prepare well for tomorrow. However, if we need to take forward the success of the work that's already been done recently and by BIRAC and all the guidance that we have received from Dr. Paul and Dr. Renu Swarup and Dr. Vijay Raghavan, I think we need to take all that forward. And we need to see what we should do further to make sure that we take also the advantage of what we have learned. And I think one of the things that has happened in the recent past is that we have really put together projects which have moved at amazing speed. And I think to create a ventilator in 5 weeks, and to create test kits in 3 weeks, and to create a product that will actually sanitize PPEs in 4 weeks is amazing. It's never been done before. So I think this is something that is the power of India and the power of working together in that whole atmosphere that we have created. And we need to adapt this very strongly as we go forward. And therefore, where is this opportunity, therefore, which is staring at us? When I see all these products being developed so quickly and to global standards, where is this opportunity? And I think, Dr. Paul, you did mention about areas like medical devices. I think that's a very nice opportunity for us to go after. Because today, if we look at our market is about $4 odd billion. China's market is about $8.5 billion. But the American market for these products is $147 billion. Now, China also exports 17 billion of these devices. So I think there is a huge opportunity for us to create a quick environment for medical devices on the lines of what the government has recently done for mobile phones. Mobile phones have been put into this model of progressive area of PMP, as it's called. And therefore, under this model, we could also bring in all the things that have happened in electronics, in mobile area, into device area, and make it really fast so that we take advantage of the time that is available with us to create this, to spur design and frugal manufacturing, frugal engineering in India to create products that are pretty much 1/5, 1/7, or 1/10 of the price of the global products. And therefore, we need to apply everything that we have learned from the whole electronics and phone area. And since I've been very deeply involved with electronics 30, 40 years, so I feel that is really where we can definitely benefit if we look at grabbing that position that China has today. And if you see recently what's happened is that a lot of governments stopped exports of devices and products which were required for COVID all over the world. They just said, you can't export. So this is the whole situation that is going to hit us again and again. And we need to be clear that for our health infrastructure that we want to create, we need to have devices which are available at very affordable prices. And we need to use the creativity and the strategies that we have adopted in the last 2 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajay. Padmaja, before I get back to more comments from within the panel, is there a question or two that we should take in from all of the people who are attending?
Yes, absolutely. So what I would actually request is, I know Mr. Gopalakrishnan may need to step out. So this was a question by Mr. Rajiv Luthra. He's had to step out for another webinar for Mr. Munjal's organization. So his question is, in your view, what kind of safeguards can be worked in from a technical perspective? With every new innovation, there are fears about the erosion of privacy. How can industry help create a balance? This is from Rajiv Luthra, founder of Luthra & Luthra Law Offices.
Sure. This is a balance between privacy and the facilities or the benefits that we want to derive from this. If you look at people sharing personal details on social media today, they're doing that because they feel that they get benefits out of that. They can talk to their friends, or they can get a job through a social network, etc. Then that's why they're willing to share many of those details. Yeah, if you look at Arogya Setu, we are willing to share some details because that's necessary today for us to figure out, if we have come into contact with anybody else who has got the virus or who is exposed to that virus. Contact tracing has to be facilitated through use of technology. So this is a balance, and we all need to work together, including government, to respect privacy. We need to have a framework, rules and regulation framework. What I believe is important is the transparency, the disclosures that are there, and everybody complying with those requirements. And then last but not the least, we need to have a mechanism to address issues that are raised through an ombudsman or through a independent authority. So if you have set up these things, then it's possible that we can do this. In a world where digital is going to be the norm, I think this fine balance has to be figured out. It's very, very important for us to figure this out. We can't go back to the old world where, we didn't have even telephones, right? So we can't go back there.
Thank you, sir. One of the things the panelists talked about is leveraging competencies. And, it's very, very interesting to see the kind of participation we've had. We have people from literally academia, industry, startups, policymakers, media, all on this webinar. So, it's really bringing together all the world together to what Mr. Paul was saying, Dr. Paul was saying, how we can build India. And we are very fortunate to have Sanjeev Bikhchandani, who's the founder of Naukri, joined us. And I thought I'd request him to share his viewpoint. And Sanjeev?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for this. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for taking my question. So look, what I am observing is that there are a whole bunch of organizations, people, individuals in the government, private sector, everybody trying to do something or the other. Is there a need for some sort of coordination of all these activities? Maybe a task force advisory body, the Apex. A simple example, right? So in Delhi NCR, there are maybe 100, maybe 200. I don't know how many small NGOs, private organizations, individual people arranging food for the homeless, the below poverty line, people unemployed, the migrant labor, all that. But yet, I'm getting reports that, hey, there's a shortage of food here, there's surplus food there. It's not all actually coordinated. So does it make sense to have, and this is just one small example. There are other, there are a large number of efforts. Some sort of a group like this can catalyze the formation of an apex body, a coordination body, information sharing house, and so on. Is that possible?
Okay. Is there somebody who wants to take this?
I guess Dr. Paul would be the right person to respond to this.
So you are on mute.
Make the question a bit easy for me.
Okay, so what I'm saying is there are lots and lots of efforts which are kind of people are doing in various silos, especially in the private sector. Governments are more coordinated, right? Is there a need to bring together some sort of platform where all these groups can come together, just exchange information, if nothing else?
So
I think, let me try. I think it's very remarkable how we as a country have responded to this on the positive side, and there are so many more positives. The positives are like Mount Everest. Problems are small. It's amazing. I'd like to inform you that there is one of the empowered groups addressing this is engaging the NGOs and the global community. What we may not have done is to reach out to all the segments of people, organizations, individuals who can be a part of a larger endeavor. I would like to work on this area, at least to position this as a work stream for the concerned people to see how this can be done. I'll take it as a suggestion. Yes, indeed, if the times become tougher, then we would need a much more concerted approach to handling this problem and addressing the problem of the people on the ground. Maybe there is a need for a more systematic way of doing it, whether it should be done by the state governments or the municipality levels or at the center, we can talk about it. I take it as a suggestion. But let me say that there is a website called covidwarriors.org, which is trying to gather volunteers who are doctors and who are social workers and NCC cadets and so on. So maybe I would request for the president to look at that. If this is serving the purpose of the kind that you are referring to. If it is not, we will create such a system. Also keeping in mind that this doesn't have to be done only at the national level, sub-national, district level, the C level, and maybe even at a smaller level, such mechanisms should happen. But it's good thinking and I appreciate it.
Padmaja, may I make one clarification to Dr. Paul? I think he walked in when I was finishing my comments, and he picked up that the industry believes the problem is over. I actually started by saying the industry, by no stretch of imagination, believes we are anywhere close to the end of this problem. And I just want to clarify. And the second point, in fact, that's where I started from. And I still have to work. We still have to figure out ways to balance with full precaution. How do you get economic activity off the ground while not compromising on health and safety at the same time? Because this is economic pandemic is going to kill people as well if we don't figure out an answer to that. And the second point you made is also important. I think industry is at this moment realizing the need for us to focus more, as Chris said, to be more committed to innovation, research, and funding in that area. But are we doing enough? Of course not. That's very clear. And there are multiple priorities of industry to make ourselves globally competitive. And this is one of them. So this will become one of the things we do. I don't think tomorrow we will get to 3 or 5% of our entire GDP going towards R&D right now. But I think that has to be our direction. That's very clear.
And sincere and apologies for extrapolating.
No, I'm just clarifying. I don't want you to going away with an impression that industry is looking at this differently from the way you appear to be, because this is everybody's battle. We are all in this together, and we are pulling in one direction, and that's the only way to do this. We don't have any other option.
Thank you.
I think what I wanted to do is there's a lot of questions from the folks. We can't actually do them all in the next 5 or 7 minutes. So what we will do is get those questions and then we'll share it with the participants here. But I wanted to give an opportunity, all of us who are here, who have picked up one thing or another, to say if you want to put that across. I mean, so I would make a comment which actually is not my invention. This came to me from Padmaja. It's a very good comment, which says at this point, we need to either pivot or perish. Now we say that to a lot of our startups. I think as a country, we have to think, and we need to think hard about that too. And this is not just about the government. This is about industry, this is about academia. It's how we are putting our act together. And the way and the pace and the energy and the transparency with which we seem to have worked together in the last few months is extremely, extremely energizing. And because I'm in the startup world, everybody that I'm working with in that world, including our interactions with government, have been absolutely phenomenal. Real time, things that would have taken weeks and months, take hours and days. So in some way, I would just make one comment and then move it on, saying the SOPs, as I think Dr. Swaroop had said, that we seem to be developing in a time of great stress and urgency. We need to go back and say, should these not become more standardized? Should these not be our SOPs? And Dr. Vijay Raghavan, when he was here, had mentioned about how somebody who joins the civil service, given 3 options, chooses option 1. and by the time been around for 2 or 3 decades, chooses option C for the same problem, tells us that there is some need for rethinking on how we do and other processes as well. And I would only say what you're saying, Dr. Paul, I think it is very important for industry to sit with government, startups, big industry, and to make sure that we all understand where each one has challenges and where each one can do something, because that's the only way we're going to solve it. This is with us for a while. We have challenges while it's there, but it's very important that we come out of this, not crippled, but much better position than we're now. So I think Chris wanted to say something. Chris, it's yours.
Yeah, before I get off, I just want to say one thing. How we have come together in the crisis, if we need to take that forward, there has to be more trust between all of us. That trust factor is extremely important. Maybe trust with verification, but trust has to be the primary focus for all of us to work together. I will just conclude there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We still have a few minutes. I think anyone wants to make another comment, Dr. Swaroop?
Yes, so I just wanted to say one thing. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to say one thing, that we are talking about seizing this opportunity now for India to be visible and to respond to the needs of our country and to respond to the needs of the world. But I think it's also very important for us to remember that if this has to be a sustained economy, if we have to take this forward, it's not just the low-hanging fruits that we have to look at. It has to be a knowledge-driven economy that will sustain. And I think this is an opportunity for us to come together and see how we could bring that in. And that really is where the academia, industry, startup collaboration will work. Because that's where the knowledge generation would be captured into the product development and all through the value chain. If today we are talking about the vaccine development, we are talking about collaboration is a different aspect. We are talking about international collaboration. But the key is going to be who holds the IP. And I think that we should not lose focus on. So and I think this crisis should give us an opportunity to understand what our weaknesses are. Why are we not being able to generate a very rich, knowledge-driven economy? And can we then use this as an opportunity to build upon it so that in the future, it's not just the market that we capture, but make it into a knowledge-driven economy, which will then be sustainable. So I think I just wanted to leave this thought and see how we can take it ahead.
Sunil, Ajay, any comments?
I have a message for your companies that IAN funds. I think we have to remember they are the lifeblood of innovation in many, many ways. For them, it is important to understand that at this moment, cash conservation in the temporary short term is absolutely essential. And many of them also need to relook at their business model. Since you talked about pivoting, I think this is the advice that many of them are getting already. Raising new funds to continuously fund continuous losses is becoming very hard right now. So they need to look inwards at as to what they can do, because frankly, every company of any size around the world is looking inwards at this moment to conserve cash and to come out with a new model, which is based on much higher efficiency and much lower resource utilization. And I mean, not saying cash alone, all resources. People are talking about using less office space, having people work anywhere. So all of these are essential requirements at this time for people to work hard at internally to turn their entities and businesses more efficient.
So just so you feel comfortable, that is exactly what the whole team is doing. Every day, 5 to 6 Zoom calls a day with every single startup, getting them to conserve cash, look at their business models, because they also have the challenge. I mean, overseas people are just laying off people and cutting salaries, and in India you can't even do that. So, and they don't have the things that the US can do, just salary support from the government. So they are fighting it, they're there. And in fact, the good thing is that some of them are looking at what's happening now and switching their business models. So, two of our companies were doing something else. And one of them, within 6 weeks, has created a ventilator, a world-class high-end ventilator. Another team has come up with a way, which is what Battelle is doing in the US, to sanitize PPEs and masks so they can be reused. Because their current business model isn't going to work very well, and they figured, let's put that on hold. Let's move into something that is actually needed for this.
So let me tell you what one of our family companies has done, Saurabh. They built a device where you can use without a ventilator, for ventilation without a ventilator.
Oh, wow.
Simple device.
I will connect with you, but Mr. Sir,
Our hospital in Ludhiana, one of India's largest hospitals.
Ask Dr. Paul if he had any comments, because we are reaching the end of our time.
Yes, I thank you so much, and thank you for being nice to my comments. Slightly different, although they were. But let me just say that yes, we have the potential, definitely in the space of innovation. But somehow, why this narrative goes away, I fail to understand. In the space of newborn health equipment, which I saw the journey firsthand, small industry rose to the occasion, and all our newborn care in the country, at least 70% of the equipment is Indian. And I wonder whether the large industry even knows about it. Something, needs to be retuned, shall I say. Because, what Aristotle said, we are what we do repeatedly. Excellence is not an act, but a habit, unquote. So what we are capable of doing over a short period of time in a special circumstance is our potential. What we do on a daily basis is our performance. Can we reboot ourselves to a different level of our culture, achievements, and never let the healthcare technologies and healthcare system down ever, ever. Thank you very much.
I think, Dr. Paul, that those are very good comments for us to close. I just want to make one point. You did bring out the need for industry to, in some ways, look at how it gets on the same page with thoughts you had, and you were not very sure it was. I'll take one takeaway from this panel. I'll take this opportunity to brainstorm a little bit within industry, and we'll come back to you with some thoughts on that.
I have one other thought. Dr. Saurabh, can I make one important point related to the...
Yes, of course.
Yeah, it's an important point, maybe for the audience also. When the innovators work, one mistake they often do, that particularly technological innovators, is that they don't engage with the clinicians and users from the beginning.
Yeah.
So much of talent and time gets wasted. So much goes into a waste because this connect is never made. Inventor makes his invention and he says, okay, this is my IP, my invention. He forgets that this, till it is tested formally in the clinical environment or in the community environment, this is not a product. It doesn't go forward. So I would say one message to those who are involved in this is, please create these connects together, technology and medicine, providers and inventors must work together, and they should learn to share IP together. The problem is inventor says, I have done my job. Mera to IP. Main to paise banaunga, startup kar raha. When you request a clinician to test that, how do you incorporate the contribution of this into his achievement? There is, because at the most, what does he do? He's devoting time. There's an opportunity cost. At the most, he will write a paper. But then, it is still seen as an invention by another person. Now, I am speaking obviously from the other side. But take it from me that this I have witnessed over and over again as a very major constraint to successful startup products. And this, just take it as a suggestion. There should be more discussion on this. And I know BIRAC and DBT have actually cracked this, but then everybody doesn't really follow the best practices. So thank you for that opportunity as well.
No, thank you very much. That's a very key suggestion. It's very relevant. It's part of a discussion we've had with one of our startups not that long ago. So it is a very relevant discussion. So let me sort of close now and say thank you very much, Dr. Paul, Dr. Swaroop, and Dr. Vijay Raghavan, who had to just leave a wee bit early. And of course, my colleague Sunil and Ajay and all the people who were, and so many others who were on the call, to say thank you very much for joining. We really are trying to discuss frameworks that we think will stand us in good stead now, but also when we emerge from it. And these kind of interactions are a very valuable input into that particular process of thinking. Just what you were saying. How do you think through this thing? So thank you very much for being with us together. Padmaja, thank you so very much for putting this all together and anchoring it from behind.
I don't think I could have done it without the team behind me, Rajneesh.
Thank you both.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you all. Dr. Paul, I'm just going to call you in a few minutes, if you don't mind.
Honored.
I'll just call you.
Honored.
Thank you.
Honored.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, Dr. Swaroop.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Ajay.
Bye.
Saurabh. Bye, Padmaja. Thank you.
Thank you, Padmaja. Thank you, Saurabh. Bye.